Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think everybody knows I'm Deirdre MacKenna, and I am the International and Islands Engagement Manager for Charts. I think we've gone over everything practical and logistical, Kirsten. Is that right? Okay, super. So I'll move on to introduce what Growing Global Networks is. It's a 6-month-long program, which has, sorry, I just clicked onto the wrong page, excuse me. It's a 6-month-long program, which is funded by Creative Scotland and Charts. And the aim is to expand the context and the communities and the markets in which Charts members work. So we want to identify and provide a series of pathways for members towards a diverse range of routes to basically the viability of their practice and their businesses. And that might be through income streams, through collaborations, and also through opportunities to present. So we're building upon the ethos of co-production, which is a formula which will listen to what members say, gather examples of best practice, and test new initiatives, as well as sharing all of the learnings that we gather along the way. And this approach of prioritising the value of the dialogue with members and the process and the methods of their work, and also prioritising exchange between members, but also obviously exchange through networks elsewhere beyond Argyll, really builds on a method that was identified in one of Chart's previous projects called Placemakers Microcluster Networks. And that was a project which Chart's director Kathleen O'Neill formed in dialogue with the Chart steering group, and also produced in collaboration with Michael Johnson from the Glasgow School of Art. And I know that some of you are aware of that. And the resources that were generated from that, and a really fascinating publication which is online on the Charts website, is still available. And the format of one-to-one sessions that were undertaken are still available. And if you're interested in any of that, please just connect directly with me. Kirsten's just put a link in the chat box to the Microclusters Toolkit. It's a really fascinating resource to enable you to kind of identify where you want to go strategically, but also just to reflect on where you are in your practice as well. So tonight's format is, I'm just going to talk very briefly about the 3 strands of growing global networks. And the last strand we'll focus on for the rest of the session for 30 or 40 minutes or so. So the 3 strands are the webinars. This is the 3rd webinar. The first last week was connecting, and we looked at practitioners who are working in collaboration. The second webinar was last night, and that focused more on reaching markets, so starting to think about incoming markets, markets elsewhere, and different approaches to engage with these. And the 3rd webinar is tonight, with the question and answer on the proposals for the international funded opportunities that are coming up. There will be 2 more webinars. There'll be a 4th and 5th webinar that are coming up in November and early December. And we haven't announced those yet because the feedback that we get from you guys is telling us how to shape them. And it's your feedback that tells us what is most valuable to you at this stage. So as we go along, we are gathering, as I indicated earlier on, we're gathering the comments that you make. And that leads me on to the 2nd strand of the Growing Global Networks programme, which is the mentoring sessions. And basically we have a budget where we can pay the fees for a specialist to undertake a dialogue with Charts members. And so we are inviting you to tell us what kind of questions would be useful for you specifically. You just need to think about your own practice and enable you to work towards that pathway that, of international development that you would like to undertake. So I'm just going to take a little minute to show you a questionnaire that we would really, really like to encourage you to complete. So as well as informing us on how to shape the programme, it also generates evidence. So for example, we can say we had X amount of questions from our members about such and such an international subject, and it's just tremendously helpful for us, rather than us having dialogues and gathering kind of anecdotal information, which is very soft data, and upon which it's hard for us to build a case for support. So I think Kirsten's going to put the link into, thanks Kirsten, into the chat board for the mentoring sessions, and that link is on the charts website as well. And I'll just share screen very quickly. Okay, so I'm hoping you can all see a Google page saying, with a picture of a map and growing global networks mentoring sessions. Just to scroll down, this is an introductory text which basically says what I've just said. We ask you to let us know who you are so that we can communicate with you. And we give a series of questions that we've just given as an indication, but you certainly don't need to choose these. What you can do is go on to the next box here and just tell us what your question is. So I would like to ask an international mentor about whatever it is. And also, if you have somebody specific in mind that you would like to talk to as a mentor, whether it's one of the speakers in our webinars, one of the chart staff, or anybody else that you think would be particularly useful to answer the questions you have. For example, last night we had questions about customs and freight logistics. We had questions about data, information on who's coming into Scotland. We had a very, very wide range of questions. So that might bring somebody to mind for you you specifically want us to connect you with. And that's it. That's all we're asking you to do. It probably takes 1 or 2 minutes. That's just asking your consent to let us look at your questions along with everybody else. So please take a copy of that link or click on it now and bookmark it. And just please, we would encourage you to use that structured format so that we can collect your questions. So that was the second strand of growing global networks. And the third one is the funded opportunity. Now, I'm assuming that you've come tonight because you have read about the funded opportunity. So I'm not going to start by reading out in great detail what that opportunity involves. As I said earlier, we'd like to take just 20 or 30 minutes listening to your questions, and we've set up 3 different ways to ask you to do that. We have what we call a Jamboard or a question page, and I'll just share screen and Kirsten will put the link in so you can see that. And if you'd like to, if you're not that confident, I hate asking questions in Zooms. If you don't like asking questions in Zooms, then just write your question on this Jamboard. You can see there's a little blue arrow at the left-hand side. If you click on that, you can write your question there, and then you just, so I, for example, would then click save and it'll pop up on the board, and that'll let us see your question. Alternatively, you can pop your question in the chat, or you can use the good old-fashioned way of just speaking out or putting your hand up. So I don't know if you're ready. We could go straight into questions. That's great. That's great. Somebody's asked if we could go through the application form, but we'll start with your question, Norrie.
Well, it was exactly that. When I looked at the application form, it looks quite a lot of detail you're asking for, quite a lot of questions. So that was, why was that? It was part of my question. And the other part was, why is the time frame for this to be completed by, I think it's February. Okay. So if you're busy, as you know, we are at the moment, why such a short deadline for the completion of this particular project?
Great. Okay, that's really helpful start. I'll just make a note of that question there as well. Okay, so there's another question in there, isn't there? Why are there so many questions? Okay, so it's a difficult one. So what I'll do is I'll share screen with the form, and please keep me right if I go down a rabbit hole or get off topic. Keep me right. So I'm trying to answer 2 questions here. So one of them is just, can you take us through the form? And then the other one is, why so many questions? Okay, so I'm hoping you can all see this screen. with a Word document. Okay, I am not going to read through the basic introductory information, nor questions 1 to 7, because I think they're fairly straightforward. But I'll read through question 8 onwards. So question 8 starts with timeline, and I'll just segue into your other question, Nori, about why February. So basically, Charts, as I said, is undertaking this work with Creative Scotland and with funding from Creative Scotland. And the conditions that come with that are that it needs to be done within this fiscal period. So by asking people to undertake the work by February, that enables us to conform with the conditions of the funder. But there is another reason as well, which wasn't really sort of rolled out at the beginning, but it is that this is a pilot project and it's relatively modest. And there's a lot of strategic development going on at this period. Charts is obviously always doing a lot of strategic development to secure funding. But it's also a period where Charts is applying for, hopefully, 3-year funding, revenue funding from Creative Scotland, but also from other sources. So if we get the feedback from this initial, and this is very much kind of dialogue and quite light touch scale of project, if we get that feedback, we can build it in to the next phase. And if the bigger this initial project is, the longer it takes administratively and financially to actually put everything in place for continuation. So I know I've just used the term light touch there, but a couple of you have nodded your head to say there's quite a lot of questions. What we feel about growing global networks, and that's one of the reasons we're having this talk tonight and why it's being recorded so that other people can hear it, is at the moment there's such a breadth of possibility about the international support that Charts members are going to ask. It's very, very hard for us to reduce it down to make a kind of set of questions or a set of conditions for a specific group of, say, practitioners or makers or businesses. We're going to get, we know from the feedback we've had already, and even just looking at the diversity of Charts members, we know that we're going to have requests for a really broad range of activities. And so this set of questions is hopefully going to enable all of those different members to give us feedback in their way. If the questions are not applicable to you, then don't put them in, and you don't need to fulfill the full word counts. We don't ask for everybody to write a minimum of X amount of words. It's just a maximum. It just depends how much people want to put in. And actually we find that a small, certainly in my experience, a small word count can be really, really hard. So we've given quite a big area for people to write what they want to write. I think that the range of questions gives us a sense of where people are coming from. We don't want to make mistakes and make assumptions about very short pieces of text that people are telling us, nor do we want to make it a protracted period where we're going through a stage 1 and stage 2 application. Absolutely not. Where we would ask for a very short initial amount of information and then ask people to do more work. So writing questions and quantities of words for applications is a really tricky thing to do, but the key headlines are here, that if some aspects are not applicable to you, then just write this isn't applicable to me, and you're not required to write a minimum of words. It's just that gives you that long field to write in. We also feel that some of the middle questions in question 13 are about motivation, an impact and legacy, and how will you know you've achieved it. Some of that might be quite hard to answer, but that's okay. Just it's fine to say I haven't done this before. It's difficult to know, but we want to have that conversation so that we can understand where people, give people the opportunity to enable us to understand where you're coming from. particularly question 13C, what is your motivation and the value of undertaking this work to you? Some of it, we're expecting that some of the proposals will be quite aspirational, because we're hoping that people will apply to do things that they haven't been able to do before. And so we wanted to make space for people to talk about that. We don't want to, you know, another way of saying that is that we could have limited the questions to be much more focused on previous experience, which is quite typical in quite a lot of funding applications. But we didn't really think that was appropriate. We need a broader range. One of the, yeah, I'm preempting future questions now. Okay, great. I'll go back to question, I think it's question 9 on the costs being covered. Just give me a second to, I clicked off my shared screen there. Just coming. There we are. Okay, so scrolling back up to question 9 and 10. Number 10 might be one that there is no other source of funding available. So you would leave that out. However, I already know from questions from some members that they had planned to undertake some international travel, and they want to do that with support from this opportunity. So they need somewhere to list their other sources of income. As I said, if it's not applicable to you, then just leave it out. But in terms of lists of costs, just the obvious stuff. One of the things that hasn't really come up that much is the two-way international projects. So there's a possibility that you might be inviting somebody in, and we would need to know the costs involved for them. But we're expecting the majority of the proposals to be enabling Charts members to go out. And then, you know, we would expect the obvious stuff. And we need to see those costs just to make sure that it's all viable and realistic. And yeah. We deliberately didn't set it out in big, long, complicated boxes. We've set it out in a list like this, so it doesn't feel that it's a massive undertaking. But I mean, these things are always pretty onerous. But it's, you know, it's Charts members. We know the members. Hope that you know us. We're not looking for you to speak to us in massive, formal, super polished, publishable text style. We just need you to talk to us and tell us what it is that you want to do in response to these kind of pillars of reference. How does that sound, Nori? Oh, I'm not hearing you. Hang on, we need to unmute you.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm not convinced. I have to say all these questions, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's to cover a variety of proposals, so
yeah, and quite different styles of proposals.
Yeah.
Mary, I know you've got your hand up, and I know that there's some questions, yeah, which I can answer. Kirsten, can you also let me know if I'm missing anything?
Yeah, I think it would maybe be good to also go over a bit about if you haven't worked internationally before, just for people maybe watching this back later on as well, just so they know kind of like the scope of the projects.
Great, and I know that Meek and Mary have their hands up. I'm not sure if anybody else does, but yeah, so please definitely apply if you haven't worked internationally before. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, because it may be that what you want to do, it's the right place and time, and that's just great. So share. But also, if it's really helpful for us if members tell us what they're aspiring to do, even at a stage when perhaps they, and you know, I do this in my own practice, can't be 100% convinced if it's fully viable because you haven't done it before. So it might be, for example, that the proposal is, I don't know, let's just say too ambitious in the timescale or with the resources that are available, but because of the dialogue that you'll be able to have with us, because you have shared your proposal, we might be able to offer support in different ways in planning to prepare a proposal for a different source of funding. But also, crucially, underneath absolutely all of this work, we then know that you have expressed an interest in undertaking this activity, and we can then build that into the argument, the case for support that we're making for more funding for Charts members to work internationally. So it's only when Charts members share with us that we can really, I mean, it's so kind of obvious and simple to say, but it is the most important thing, that we can't do our job unless Charts members tell us what it is that each of you needs. So please share. So please don't. There's absolutely definitely no criteria that says you must have previous international experience. And if because you don't have that previous experience, there are things that you can't answer, then just say it in the application. A great thing that you can say that might be worth writing in the chat is, I would welcome Charts feedback to the development of this proposal, or I would welcome Charts advice on really planning this aspect of the proposal. And that's what we're here to do. So you don't always have to write applications where you've got like the really super shiny, perfect, super experienced response to everything. You can use the proposals as a channel for dialogue with us. And it's if you think about it from our point of view, it's the structure of the proposal that enables us to collect that. If we do all of our work through emails and conversations one-to-one, it's really hard for us to formalize that. So it just enables us to collect the information on your terms, the way you present it about your practice. Is there anything else about that point, Kirsten, you think would be helpful to add?
Just to say, I've added that onto the Jamboard just now, so people can access that if that's something they want to put in their application. But yeah, I would just say do apply for it, because we have had people apply for previous opportunities, and if we've not been able to support them in the application that they're currently doing, we do try to offer alternatives, and that has led, for example, in the Island Development Project, RAV, we had applications for residencies, which people undertook, and people who had really strong proposals, but maybe they didn't get that time, they were supported in other ways. So it's always good throwing your hat in the ring, and don't feel too nervous just due to the length of the application. If you need help breaking it down on the Jamboard, I can add in some links to tips for writing proposals and applications. I'll need to source them, but they will be there by the time we publish this next week. So you'll be able to look through that and get some advice.
Thanks, Kirsten. So I know that Meek and Mary had your hands up. Anybody else? It was Mary I saw first. So Mary, are you ready to share your question?
Well, mine are kind of fairly basic. I mean, I'd rather Meek wanted to go first, because I imagine it's probably more of a live sort of application sort of question.
I think my question is quite a simple question. It's is it allowed to work together with a university? Because sometimes in applications, like universities and students, and it's a bit it's not possible. And yeah, so I was wondering, because I'm invited by a university in Japan, and it would be really great if I could go there and to do a project with students, but
Brilliant.
And I haven't had an experience like that, and I haven't been so far in my life, so it's all quite new.
No, this is very much about it's growing global networks. So a partnership, a network through an academic institution in a different part of the world pretty well slots into quite a lot of the key criteria. That sounds, there's no problems with that. I do know that, yes, some funding, but I think actually make a point about that, just to point out more generally, is that often the sources of funding will say we won't match fund if it is also funded by an institution. Whereas if your proposal with these other sources is simply for you to enable you to go there and you to kind of immerse your practice in that context, then some of those funders would fund that. So that neither is an issue here, because we don't preclude that at all. But it's just to point that out, and if you want to talk about that or any other aspects, I'm happy to do that at any time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very good to hear. They promised me to pay for the flight, but yeah, to just go there for a lecture it would be really silly. So it would be great if I could stay a bit longer and do some research there. But okay, then I will try to write down something.
Super.
Thank you.
Great. Now somebody else apart from Mary had their hand up. Kate, you had a question, didn't you? Yes, are we going to ring fence funds for different disciplines, businesses? What is the total funding? Yes, the total funding, as it says in the application form, is just £11,000. It is not massive. And no, we're not ring fencing at this stage, Kate. We are going to look at the proposals and try to support a range, and there's a reason for that. And that reason links with one of the things that I wonder if there's going to be a question about, and don't want to just preclude. But so I'll make sure that we come up with that. But anybody else got their hand up that has been waiting? I could go on then. I'll go back to the application form and share screen. And Kirsten, if you could give me a nudge just to let me know if I've missed any questions. But looking back to the application form, so Kate, just following on from that point, the reason that we want to support, hopefully, a fairly diverse range of proposals is so that we learn from it. If we end up, if the applications all absolutely come from a range of practitioners who share characteristics of their practice or their businesses, then that's what we'll support. But I think it would be beneficial to the Chart's membership for us to support a range of different types of practice, because one of the conditions, as you will be aware of, is that they will share their learnings. And then we will have this diverse group of resources on the Chart's website, and we will share in different ways as well, that will benefit a wider group. So in question 13H, who do you intend to share your learnings with, and why your sharing will be beneficial for them? We really want to hear that, because we want to hopefully receive applications from practitioners who are happy to share. And some people don't feel very confident doing that. And if that's the case, then just write that in and say, I wouldn't know how to go about sharing, or I wouldn't feel confident. But we could have a dialogue with you about how to do that. And find ways that are appropriate for each individual proposal. But it is really important that the broader membership benefits from this this kind of pilot opportunity, and because otherwise we would run the risk of the resources from this opportunity having an impact for a very small group of people, and that's not really how Charts works. And we think that we can work in ways which benefit a wider group of people, even if it is a small budget and a small people undertake the work.
I would just like to add in as well, Deirdre, as well, if anybody's not confident in sharing their work, Deirdre and I will both be there to help on aspects of that, and either kind of finding the right people for you to engage with in Argyll, be that like community groups, schools or other makers or artists or businesses. So you will also have that internal chart support from different members of staff as well, to kind of give you those training and resources, which might be an extra benefit.
I see there's a comment in from Agav. Agav, do you want to join us and just say a few words? It'd be nice to hear from you.
Aye, sure. No, I was just saying there that in case anybody didn't notice the message, that if there's any kind of Gaelic language / culture things that look like playing into your work, please do get in touch for advice or blether, anything at all. I'm here. I was going to say at all times, that's not strictly correct, Tuesday to Thursday.
Agav,
That's it, really.
Yeah, Agav is our charts Gaelic manager. I've forgotten your correct title, is that correct?
Gaelic Culture Officer. Yeah, it's very formal sounding, but I'm not a formal person, so.
And that's really helpful. So any questions, not just about this opportunity, obviously, but we are incredibly fortunate to have a whole staff member who is an expert in his field. So take advantage of him. Thank you very, very much. So that's great, Agav, thanks. There's a whole load of things have just flooded into my head that I hadn't really brought to the front of my mind before. And I hope it's done the same for all the questions, everybody who's here with your questions as well. So Kirsten has put the links back in to the chat, and also I can see a question from Nori about applying at later stage. Yeah, absolutely, because what we want to see is development. We want to see continuation, consistency, evolution, growth, growing global networks. So yes, there are no kind of penalties to participating at this stage that would inhibit anybody from participating at a later stage. It's obviously, we wouldn't duplicate an identical thing, but there would be the natural growth around the activities. I can see a few more messages coming in. That's fine. Thank you very much, Kate. We'll see you soon. Thanks for coming. Yes, of course, you can put in fees and stipends for your time. Yes, definitely. That's important. Otherwise, I'm not sure how you'd survive. So, yes, definitely. Thank you for asking that question.
And Meek, you have your hand up as well. Just feel free to shout in now. There's quite a small group, so we don't have to be as formal. There's not hundreds of us.
Yeah. There's another question in my mind about 13B, your ability to undertake this work. So what do you expect there to be sent? Like, is that links to? Yeah, to what?
Yeah.
I really didn't understand that one.
Yeah, well, again, it's that range of experiences. So, you know, if somebody wants to do something that sounds, I don't know, say wonderfully ambitious, we would need to know if they've got the experience to do that. So, again, from what I said earlier about having previous experience, it may be that you say, I haven't done this before, but the motivation and the benefit, which are different questions, would be that they enable my practice to take this really big step. I would need X, Y, Z, A, B, C support. And remember, we've got our mentors there. So we might link that proposal with a mentor for somebody to undertake a period of time or a dialogue to work through how feasible it is. But it's not that we're expecting, it's not that we necessarily need everybody to, to have achieved a certain standard. It's not that, but it may be that there's something that somebody wants to undertake. Practical things like where language is an issue, and we want to give space for us to be told about that. It may be that there's some cultural nuances that are important, and that might give space for somebody to talk to us about that. So again, it's back to that thing of wide range, and we're trying to make space in the application for.
Right. Yeah. Now I understand. Thank you.
And that's a really helpful question to be asked. Thanks. It's the sort of thing that I didn't necessarily want to bring up because it is quite nuanced, but it's really important as well. Anybody else? Rudy, I'm just completely putting you in the spot. Have you got any questions? And if not, don't worry, don't worry. Just haven't heard, and I haven't spoken to you for a while, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you all. Thanks for that. No, that was really helpful. I think in the question and actually the kind of what everybody was feeling about it. Now, I think it makes sense. I saw that it's a really short side budget that you have, so it's kind of like thinking of different aspects of what you do. But yeah, no, I think it's really good. I think it makes a lot of sense to try to create that international kind of relationship and bring people to Scotland as well. And that's kind of like what I'm interesting to be involved with, especially as I said, with Mauritius and bringing them in Scotland, and that would be quite interesting. So thank you very much for that.
Great, thanks for coming tonight. Yeah, I think just another thing that I would like to say is that I think in you know, with cultural agencies, say like Charts and others who manage funds, I think a lot of attention is given to the actual funds as if the funds are kind of like the zenith, like the ultimate part. But really we see this funding strand within growing global networks as just one part, and that the funded activities will lead to more sharing of international practices, that the mentorship gives us that space and time to have the dialogues, and that Charts as a whole will learn more about what the membership wants. So please bear that in mind. You know, there isn't a kind of kudos or a status or anything about winning this funding. We see the funding, the mentorships and the dialogue as completely flowing interchangeable elements within the overarching achievement of gaining insight to what the ambitions and aspirations of the sector are, and therefore what Charts can work towards supporting. Good stuff. Okay, well, if there are no more kind of formal, structured, specific questions, we could bring things to a close, especially in terms of the recording, and have a chat for anybody who wants to stay on. If anybody would like to leave us now, then I'd just say thank you very much. It's lovely to see you all. Thanks so much for coming. And please fill out those questionnaires for us so that we've got everything in writing. And I'll be following each one of them up individually. If you've got multiple questions, then fill out loads of them. We've actually had that from the membership already, where we've had 3 or 4 questions, and that's really, really helpful. And it's creating that space and a kind of formalization. And I hope afterwards it creates a sort of a sense that the questions are important and valid, because you've put them into the structure. So thank you in advance for doing that, and thank you very much for coming tonight.